This video contains spoilers for the God of War series. There is a moment brief, almost invisible, when Kratos stops being the God of War. It happens in the quiet, in the breath he holds before he speaks, in the way his eyes harden, not with fury, but with fear. Not fear of monsters or gods or fate, fear of something far worse, fear of remembering. Kratos is a man who walks like a storm that learned to wear a human face, silent on the outside, thunder on the inside, carrying the weight of 1,000 battles beneath every scar. There's a heaviness to him now, carved into the lines of age and etched into the pauses between his words. A heaviness that no amount of strength can lift, because beneath all the rage, beneath the godhood and violence and impossible resilience, there is a truth he never outran. Sometimes, when the world around him finally stops burning, you can see it. The flicker in his eyes where fire sinks into something fragile, something almost human. Regret, not the kind that passes with time, but the kind that brands itself into the soul. Kratos isn't haunted by gods or curses or prophecies. He's haunted by memory. His memory, a past he has tried to drown, bury, outrun, deny, and smother, but one that clings to him with the same permanence as the ash fused to his skin. And for all the deities he's slain and all the realms he's reshaped, the one enemy he never managed to conquer was the man he once was. That is his tragedy, the blades that never stopped burning him, the ghosts that whisper whenever the night goes too still, the cycle of violence that molded him long before Olympus ever noticed his name, and the self-imposed curse whispering that redemption is something meant for others, not for him. Kratos didn't fail to escape his past because he was too slow, or too weak, or too broken. He failed because the past was not behind him. It lived inside him. Every step he took forward forced him to carry the weight of everything he once tried to leave behind. And that, more than any prophecy or divine punishment, is the real reason Kratos could never escape his past. And the real reason his story remains one of the greatest tragedies ever told in gaming. They were the moment Kratos stopped being a man and became something else. Something shaped by desperation and fire. Long before he wore the title God of War, Kratos stood on the edge of defeat, broken and bloodied on a battlefield that was ready to swallow him whole. And in that moment, he didn't pray for courage or wisdom or mercy. He begged for power, and Ares answered. Not with salvation, but with shackles glowing white-hot, wrapping themselves around Kratos' forearms like a brand upon a slave. The moment those chains fused to his skin, everything changed. The blades weren't weapons, they were a contract. A declaration that Kratos no longer belonged to himself. With every swing, every slash, every flaming arc that tore through enemies, the blades fed on him. They fed on his rage, his fear, his desperation. They didn't just spill blood. They demanded it. And the tragic truth is that Kratos didn't simply wield the blades. He surrendered to them. What makes the blades so devastating is not their history, but their persistence. Even after Ares fell beneath Kratos' fury, even after the gods tried to bury him beneath betrayal after betrayal, the blades lingered, like a memory that refused to fade. They followed him through Olympus, through the underworld, through a lifetime of vengeance, burning themselves deeper into the man he was becoming. They were the proof that no matter how many gods he killed, no matter how many thrones he shattered, part of him was still chained to the moment he cried out for Ares. And when Kratos finally left Greece behind, when he crossed the world in search of something quieter, something softer, the blades were the one thing he tried to bury. But the truth of trauma is that it doesn't stay buried. The day he dug those blades out of the frozen earth in Midgard, hands trembling, voice cracking with the weight of a past he swore he'd left behind, was not a moment of strength. It was surrender, not to Ares, not to the gods, but to the truth he never wanted to face, that the darkest parts of him were never truly gone. Because the blades don't cling to Kratos' arms, they cling to his soul, a reminder of the man he once was, and the man he fears he still could become. Long before Olympus feared his rage, long before the realms whispered his name with dread, Kratos lived a life that could have saved him, simple, fragile, human. A wife who believed he was more than his rage, a daughter who saw him not as a warrior, but as a father whose arms were the safest place in the world. And in one moment, in one blinding act of violence, he destroyed it. Not by choice, not with intent, but with the same fury that had been carved into him since childhood. Ares didn't just manipulate him, he weaponized Kratos' deepest wound, the hunger to be strong enough to protect the things he loved. And with a single command, he turned that desire against the very people who embodied it. The ashes of Lysandra and Calliope did not cling to him as punishment. They fused to him because he could not forgive himself. Every step he took afterward, every breath, every victory, every massacre, he carried them with him, he chose to. Because a part of Kratos believed that if he ever let their memory fade, then he would be absolved. And absolution felt like betrayal. The world calls him the Ghost of Sparta, as if the name is just another title, another myth layered onto the legend. But the truth is far more brutal. Kratos is a ghost, not because he is haunted, but because he refuses to let himself live. The ashes became a second skin, a reminder that he is not allowed to forget, not allowed to heal, not allowed to move on. Even when he killed Ares, even when he became a god himself, even when he raised Olympus and brought the entire Greek world crashing into the sea, none of it silenced the voices, none of it softened the memories. He saw his daughter in the faces of innocents he cut down. He heard his wife in every quiet moment that followed the chaos. And perhaps the cruelest truth is that he carried their ashes into the Norse realms, not because the curse forced him to, but because guilt told him he must. Kratos was not running from his past, he was dragging it with him. Mile after mile, realm after realm, until eventually it stopped being something behind him and became something inside him. The ghosts did not damn him, he damned himself. And in doing so, he ensured that no matter where he went, no matter what he became, he would never again be a man untouched by tragedy. Violence didn't just surround Kratos, it raised him, shaped him, carved him into something the world would one day come to fear. Long before he was a god, before he was a general, before the blades seared themselves into his flesh, Kratos was a child taught that strength was survival and mercy was death. Sparta was a cradle built from discipline and blood, a place where boys learned to become weapons, not men. And in that crucible, Kratos thrived, not because he wanted to, but because he was too afraid of what weakness cost. His entire life became a series of escalating battles against other children, against enemy nations, against the ghosts that lingered long after the fighting stopped. The tragedy is that Kratos never learned how to exist without conflict. Peace was foreign to him, soft, unfamiliar, almost threatening. So when Ares offered power, Kratos didn't see it as a seduction. He saw it as a continuation of the only life he'd ever known. Every act of violence after that became easier, more natural, as if he was slipping deeper into a destiny carved before he ever had the chance to understand what destiny meant. The gods didn't corrupt Kratos, they simply amplified what Sparta forged. But the cycle didn't end with the fall of Ares, or Zeus, or even Olympus. Kratos found himself locked in a loop where every attempt to escape violence only pushed him further into its grip. He killed to protect, killed to avenge, killed to survive, and killed because killing was the only language the world had ever taught him. And each time he thought he had reached the end, each time he stood over a broken god, believing the war inside him had finally been silenced. Something else rose in its place, guilt, rage, grief, or the twisted belief that justice required more blood. When he finally left Greece behind, crossing oceans and realms in search of a life untouched by violence, he didn't realize that the cycle was not rooted in the world around him. It was rooted in him. The rage wasn't something the gods implanted. It was something he cultivated, something he fed every time he refused to forgive himself, every time he let anger become easier than vulnerability. And when Atreus entered his life, that cycle was suddenly reflected back at him with terrifying clarity. For the first time, Kratos saw what violence looks like when passed down, inherited like a curse, rather than inflicted. He saw flashes of his younger self in the boy's temper, in the way Atreus' voice sharpened when frustrated, in the way power felt good to him, too good. It was then Kratos understood the truth. The cycle of violence was not a chain forged by fate or gods, but by choices, his choices. And if he didn't break it, if he didn't learn to become something other than a weapon, then his son would grow to carry the same ghosts, the same ashes, the same grief carved into bone. Kratos, for the first time in his long and brutal life, feared something more than gods. He feared passing on the parts of himself he hated most. And in that fear lay the beginning of something new, an understanding that the greatest battle he would ever fight wasn't against a deity or a monster, but against the version of himself that violence had created. Kratos' curse was never the gods, never the blades, never the ghosts fused to his skin. It was the belief that he didn't deserve to be anything more than the monster they made him. That was the real tragedy beneath every roar, beneath every shattered throne and blood-soaked victory. There was a quiet, hollow truth gnawing at him. He could not imagine a future where he was worthy of peace. The curse lived in the way he flinched when Atreus called him father, as if the word was a weapon he didn't know how to block. It lived in the hesitation before every lesson he tried to teach, terrified that any guidance he offered would simply shape the boy into another version of himself. And it lived most painfully in the way he held his past, tight, unforgiving, as if letting go would somehow erase the people he lost. Kratos believed that redemption was a road he was not meant to walk. That peace was something earned by better men, softer men, men whose hands were not soaked in the memories he carried. That belief, that crushing, suffocating belief, was his true curse. Not the ashes, not the chains, not even the gods who tormented him. It was the simple, heartbreaking idea that he could never be worthy of the love he still tried to give. But in the end, the real tragedy of Kratos isn't the gods he killed, the realms he burned, or the monsters he overcame. It's that every time he tried to walk away from violence, violence followed him anyway. Because the truth is, Kratos was never just running from his past. He was running from the version of himself he once believed he had to be. And that's why his story hits harder than most mythologies. Because behind all the fury and power, behind the gods and monsters, there is a man who is terrified of becoming himself again. A man who carries forgiveness like a weapon because it's the only thing he has left to fight with. A man who knows that redemption is not a destination, it's a punishment, a road he has to walk every single day. And maybe that's why, no matter how many new lands he crosses, no matter how many times he tries to bury the blades, they always find their way back to him, because the past waits, because guilt lingers, because Kratos learned the most painful truth of all: you can change your path, but you will always carry the weight of where you came from.